Hello and welcome to Control-Delete Tutorials. Today we're going to be looking at ways to approach modeling, 3D modeling, computers and computer assets like a monitor, a standard mouse, keyboard, and the PC tower. So the first place we want to start with doing any project is references. So these are some references that I just grabbed off the internet. And if we just take a look at these, let me just maximize this. So one thing that I'm looking for with this is going to be kind of beginner level 3D modeling. So something like this where we have all this detail. A lot of this will be able to be handled in texturing, and we're not so much worried about doing this level of modeling right here. We're looking at a very beginner approach to a lot of these sort of objects. So here we have, regular 3-button mouse or 2-button in the scroll wheel. So I'll show you how we can approach that. Side view, kind of a back view of a monitor here. And there's a couple different styles of these. Just a very standard PC tower. More monitors. Another kind of basic tower there, and then a kind of very standard QWERTY keyboard. So those are the references that I have. So starting off, I have another video where I show how to bring in image reference, and I'm kind of going to cover that just briefly now. If you need a little bit further in depth, go check out that video because it'll kind of walk you through it more. Kind of show you that. So the thing I'm going to start with is going to be the monitor. So what I've done here is I've also opened up Photoshop. Any photo editing software is going to work fine here. Just kind of moving stuff out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring in my monitor, and I'm going to make it be a different size here. So let's say our monitor from here to here is roughly, let's say, 14 inches there. So if we're looking at 14 inches here, and then down here we probably have another, let's say, 3 inches. So we'll call it 18, just kind of round it out. So 18 inches from top to bottom. So I'm going to go to image size, and I'm going to change this to inches, and I'm going to make it in the height 18, which will make this image quite a lot bigger. But I'm going to change my resolution to be smaller, just so the image file doesn't end up being huge. So I'm just going to make that 100. And we'll see here, it didn't really change because of the amount that I had made the image larger, but I changed the resolution to make it smaller, so it stayed pretty much the same size. So I'm just going to resave this image, but I want to take note of the image size. So we can see this is 18 tall by 23.66 wide. So that's going to be very important, because when we get into 3ds Max, we want to keep things at the same aspect ratio. So I'm going to go to my top view, I'm going to create a plane, and you know what, I'm going to go to keyboard entry just because I don't normally show this, and I'm going to just type in my numbers here. So in this case, my height is going to be my length here, and my width will be the width. So if we come back here, again, image size, our width is 23.66. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to type in 23.66, and under my length I'm going to type in 18, and I'm going to say create. So this is just another way that we can go about creating objects in 3ds Max. We can keyboard entry them in. You can always just draw them in and then type in your numbers and what have you, but so since this is going to be an image reference, I don't need these segments here. So I'm going to right click on the spinners here and just set those to 1. The next part I'm going to do is, since this is basically going to be upright, my monitor and my reference, I'm going to go ahead and make sure my angle snap toggle is turned on and just rotate this 90 degrees. And we can see 90 there in the first value. And then I'm just going to move this up. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about materials and applying materials and texturing and things of that nature, because again, I do have other videos that show that in further depth. But I just kind of want to show where you're going to go to drop in your images here. So I'm going to open up the Slate material editor. This is the node-based material editor that Max has. And under my materials, I'm going to drag in a standard material. And I'm just going to scroll in my mouse wheel until I can see this. So this is going to be my reference that I'm going to use, my material reference. So first thing I can do is I can put my mouse over top of this little circle, and I can click and drag, and I'm going to get this little wire that comes out, and I can drag this over top of my plane, and it's now applying this material to this object. And you can see my object color here, which was pink, and if I go into wireframe right now, we can still see that's pink, is being overridden by the material color. So just to give you an idea of how materials work, this object color is merely for objects and organization, whereas this is an actual material that we'll see. Nice part about that is I can easily tell it to be two-sided or not, or I could turn that off, which is nice to have. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just scroll my wheel out here. I'm going to go to my images. I'm going to grab my laptop image here, or my monitor image. I'm just going to drag that right in, and that'll bring that right in. And then I need to hook this up to my diffuse color. Diffuse color is your surface color, your basic surface color. So I can just click and drag, and that will connect up. I'll see this little M, which means this is the map slot. This is kind of the old style of the material editor that they've kept in, but just so we can see that this image is being hooked into the diffuse. Now I do need to go up here. You can see there's like a little checker pattern with a light bulb. I'm going to click that to turn it on, and that means that it's going to show shaded in the viewport, so I can see my image here. Now this was a PNG, so it does look slightly different. If that really becomes bothersome, I can double click on my map here. So double click to make that active here. I can just scroll down and tell it just be opaque. When I tell it to just be opaque, actually it's not going to do that because it's not actually using the alpha channel from the PNG, so never mind. But I can use this as my reference, so I go into my front view here, and it's slightly confusing using this. So what I'm actually going to do, because I don't like that I'm seeing that background, and I'm not a huge fan of PNGs for this reason, I'm just going to hit Control-Shift-N to create a new layer, and I'm going to paste in a color here. So I'll go with a kind of a neutral gray, and see what that looks like. Okay, so that lets me see very clearly what image I have here. I'm not worried about this white that I'm getting here. That's based on the image that we pulled from. I could use white, you know, I could sample the color from here and paste that in if I really want to. But I'm going to Control E to flatten this, and I'm just going to resave this PNG. And when I do that, it's going to get rid of that transparency, and it fixes my image. So now I'm not seeing anything weird here. So be careful with PNGs with transparency, bringing those in as references. So that's our starting point here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to start creating my monitor and my base and everything. And I'm going to take this image now and kind of drag this back. And we can see here I kind of want this to sit on the ground plane. So I just kind of moved it down a little bit to where that part's sitting on there. But one thing that can get annoying is the back face of this image. As I rotate around, I want to be able to see through this image so I can see my subject matter that's going to be here. So what I can simply do is right click, go to Object Properties. I'm going to do two things in here. One, I'm going to freeze the object. That means it's going to make it so I can't click on it. Second, I'm going to say show frozen in gray. I'm going to turn that off. I don't want it to be gray. And then I'm going to turn off back face. I'm going to hit OK. And now we don't see the back face anymore. And I can't click on the object. So that's handy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to plane here. And you know, I could really just go to keyboard entry and create another plane and use that. And that's fine for what I'm doing. I will end up changing the size here, and I'm not going to use scale to do this. I'm going to go to the modify panel here, and I'll just change my width. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees like my other one. I'm going to go to my front view, hitting F. I'm going to turn off realistic and set it to shaded to get rid of any shadows here, because that's just annoying to look at. I'm going to move this up here. I'm going to change my length until this fits the size of my screen here. And I'm going to do my best to keep my monitor centered here, so keeping it centered in my X direction and in my Y direction. I'm not worried about the fact that that's not matching up. I'm not going to offset my entire object just for that. So I started with a plane. You could start with a box. You know, whatever you want to start with is fine. It doesn't really kind of matter what you want to start with. So I'm going to right click on this object, convert to editable poly, and I'm simply going to select this main polygon. I'm going to go to extrude, and I'm going to extrude this out. Now when I hit the settings here, it's going to bring up the dialog box here. Well, it's not so much a box anymore. It used to be, but now the display is a little different. But I can just click and drag my settings here, and I don't have a thickness here, but I can kind of gauge it based on the monitor I have in front of me. So I'm just going to say, yeah, it's somewhere under an inch. So if 1 is an inch in this case, it's under an inch. So I'll type in, I don't know, 0.75, something like that. I'm going to check. Now you'll see what's happened here is this object, since I started with a plane, I'm doing this on purpose, not using a box, just so I can show a couple techniques for things. This object, as I extruded, the plane is no longer here on this side because it's been extruded out. There's an easy fix for this. I can hold shift and I can drag this plane back as an element. So I'm cloning this plane that I had selected and moving it back while holding shift and creating that. But I need to use flip to flip this around. I'm going to show you why first. So I'm going to right click and go to object properties and turn on back face call. Okay, so we can see this is the back face. These are our normal faces, so these are the directions our polygons are actually facing. If I tried to move this here and weld everything together, it wouldn't work because this face is technically backwards, or this polygon is backwards. So I'm going to say flip so that it's facing the right way, and I'll line this up as close as I can get it. And now I'm going to use the weld tool. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to border mode. I'm going to hit Control A, which will select any border edges, which are edges that surround a hole. And in this case, there are technically 2 holes in this object because of what I've done with these faces. And I'm going to hold Control and click Vertex. When I do that, it converts whatever I have selected here, and I hold Control and I click one of the other selection modes, it will convert it. So in this case, it selected all of the vertices here, which makes that really handy. I'm going to come down to the weld settings, and this tolerance is actually close enough to where those have welded together. If they haven't in your case, turn this number up until they do weld. Just be careful that you don't go so high that the vertices here weld with the ones down here or the ones across. So I hit the check mark when I'm finished, and that's the basic part of my monitor. So the next part I want to do is I want to do this inset section here. So our monitor has polygons that are inset here to create the screen. So I'm going to go to polygon mode. I'm going to select this polygon. I'm going to go to Inset, Settings, and you can see what Inset is doing. So I can change my settings here by either clicking and dragging on the spinner, or I can nudge them up or down, or I can type in a number. Either way. I just normally will click and drag until I get something pretty close to what I want. I'm just going to type in 0.5. And I'll hit check when I'm finished. Okay? And then the screen normally is kind of either extruded or beveled in. In this case, this reference looks like it might be beveled. So we'll use the bevel tool. So I'm in polygon mode, still have this polygon selected. I'm going to click the bevel settings. Now by default, it's going to give me a positive height value and a negative outline. So the outline controls the size here of the bevel, whereas the height controls how far in or out. Now in this case, I'm going to go inward, so I'm going to type in something like -0.1 just as a starter, and I'll change my outline to actually not be very far. Let's go -0.1 also, so that way it's going in and insetting, or basically insetting at the same time. So that gives us a nice little beveled edge. I'm going to hit the check mark to finish that out. That's the front of our monitor. Now we do have buttons and stuff down here, and I can show you how to approach those. And then we have the back, which I don't have a reference here for the back, but I'm going to pull up one of my images here just so we can see what we see here. Alright, so the monitor has kind of beveled in to make this back part as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. Oops, that's Photoshop. So I'm going to select the polygon on the back here, and let's see, let's check that again. So I'm actually going to inset just slightly first, and then I'm going to bevel and use the bevel settings. So this time I want to bevel outward, and I want my outline setting here to be something kind of like that. Now again, for this demo that I'm doing, we're not getting into these like really small details of these little slots like this. That's all stuff that we could do with texturing and alpha channels, and so we're not worried about that for what we're doing here. If I wanted to, if I really want to get into detail, I could create this kind of inset box, so we'll go ahead and just do that. So to do that, I'm going to do inset again, and I'm fine with those settings. But what I'm going to do is go to scale. Let me change my color here too, just so we can see my wireframes really easy for you guys. And I'm going to use scale here. I'm just going to scale this down to make this kind of box shape that they have in the back. Let's go a little smaller. Something like that. Okay, so I'll do that. I'm going to use inset again. And this time I'm going for a very small number. Sorry, not inset first. Extrude first. That's my bad. So extrude, I'm going to go negative value. So I'll type in -0.1. That's fine. I'll do inset. And so I have 0.06. That's fine. And then I'm going to do extrude, and this time I'm going to extrude out the same value but positive. So now that's given me this little part that's sunk in and back out, just so I could get this kind of part that goes in and back out to make this. So I'm basically going to have that as just my monitor. Next, I'm going to start on the stand for the monitor, and currently I'm going to keep them separate. There's really no need to do them as one extrusion, because this part that's manufactured is not extruded from this part. They're two separate pieces that are attached. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and just name this monitor. And to start this on the back, what I can see here, if I look at this shape, this is what I want to start with. a cylinder that's kind of extruded through. That's what I'm going to end up using to make my object. So to do that, I'm going to go to Cylinder. Actually, I'll just do this in perspective view just so I can get it. I kind of eyeball this. So I'm going to go about that big. Let's see, so my height, I'll just do 4.5. My segments, I'm going to right click on this and just set that to 1. And my radius, let's go ahead and just make it 0.75. I don't know why, because I'm a nut. And the last thing I want to do is I don't need this many polygons around, so I'm just going to make this, let's say, 12-sided. Right click, convert to editable poly. I'm going to go to element mode and select everything here. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. And I'll go ahead and move this down in the Z to 0. Now the reason I did that is, okay, let's not crash. What's going on in Max? Whew, that's scary. Don't want that to happen while I'm doing a tutorial. So the reason I did that is I rotated it that way just so my pivot point is set up where I want it to be. So it's just centered to this object now. So I can make sure that if I, if I made this off to the side and I right click here, I can see that I've centered this object to my scene, to the center of my scene. So I'm just going to move this up here. That's pretty much centered on this, so let's see. And this actually isn't as wide as the one in their image, so what I'll do is I'll go into element mode and I'll scale this down to where this is just smaller than that box. I'm going to click on this little red light bulb, which is the isolate selection toggle. When I do that, it's going to hide everything but what's selected. And I'm just going to do that real quick so I can show you something here. So cylinders by default have n-gons, which are these multi-sided polygons on the ends. Ideally, I don't want to have those, so I'm going to delete those. I'm going to leave them deleted just for the time being, and I'll end up fixing this in a moment. The next part is I started with a cylinder because I can extrude out to get this part of my cylinder to start creating the stand here. So I'm just going to grab a couple of polygons from here. Let's say something like that. And I'm going to extrude. And I'm just going to extrude out a little bit here. And I'm going to move this down slightly. And what I'm doing is I'm making this edge here kind of match up with that edge there, so it's a nice smooth transition. Okay, so that kind of follows that, and this gives me this little dip in that I have in the image here. And then it's going to get extruded one more time to create this bend. So I'll just tap extrude settings, and in this case I'm not really worried what these are because I'm going to end up moving this around anyway. So I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to use scale. I'm going to scale this down to where this is flat, and I'm going to scale this in just slightly, trying to keep the same width that I have there. Just so I have something like that. And so that's going to give me this kind of part that I can now extrude downward. I did use scale to scale this flat. I could have also used make planar Z and would have done the same thing. Actually, would have done it faster and nicer. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, I'm going to extrude this down, and you know what, I'll put this hole in here just so we can see how we could approach something like that. So I'll extrude down to about here on my monitor. So I'm going to turn this light bulb back off there. And obviously mine's not perfect to what the Dell one is, but I'll just kind of work off of this. So I'm going to use extrude settings. Again, I'm just going to hit check because I can always move this down to where I want it to be. And this is going to be where that hole is going to start. I'm going to cancel that first. I'm going to move this up a little. Okay, so I'll extrude that down. And I'll extrude that down one more time. Oh, this actually has a curve back. I didn't realize that. So let me go ahead and move these. I'm going to undo and just take these edges up a little higher. I didn't realize I came down so far down with it there. Alright. And I'll extrude again. And you know what? Actually, we're going to try something else. I'm going to do hinge from edge. So I'm going to click the settings there. I need to first start off by selecting my edge. So I'm going to select here. And I'll put this at 45 degrees. And actually what I could do is give it 2 segments so I get more of a curve here. Or 4 segments if you want it to have a nice bend to it. We'll do 4, that's fine. I'm going to hit check. Now I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select this edge and the same edges on the other side. Excuse me, I just sneezed, sorry. I'm going to select the edges on the other side here. I'm going to hold Control and click Backspace, or I can hold Control and click Remove. And that's going to get rid of those edges, and it's going to allow me to keep 4-sided polygons here, because we want to have 4-sided as much as possible. Would it have really hurt to have the 3-sided ones? Not really, but 4-sided is like the best way to go as far as polygons are considered. And it would have been nice if I would have done that at the top here, but you know, just trying to show some different techniques. Okay, so I'll go back to polygon mode and we'll extrude this down. I'm going to go into my left view just so I can see with this open. So we have our base, which is probably going to start right about here, so we'll extrude this down a bit more. I'll hit check. You know what, just for fun, we'll go ahead and do extrude from hinge from edge again. And in this case, I'm going to select the edge here, so that this will bend down this direction and come out flat again. And I'll hit the check. I'm going to do the same thing with the edges. I'm going to go to where all 4 of these triangles have been created. I'm selecting the ones, so basically every other edge here on both sides. Control Backspace will remove those. I could just hit Backspace, but I'm in a habit of hitting Control Backspace because when you hit Control and Backspace, you'll also remove vertices that may be undesirable. So in this case, it wouldn't matter either way, just based on how this is. So we're going to extrude this one more time, and I'm just going to hit check. I'm going to right click on Z, which will bring this up to my plane level here, so my flat level. And I'm going to end up creating the base just from this. So the base that we have here, you can see in the back it's got a little bit more in the back, and then it's got these angled sections. So this is our back here, so I'm going to go ahead and extrude this, say like 2 inches, something like that. And before I go any further, you probably realized, hey, we never put that hole in here we said we are going to put. So the way I'm going to do this is what I need is I need edges that run here. Now you can just, you know, cut things in willy-nilly and end up with horrific edges and polygons and topology to get this, or you can do it the right way. So we're going to do it the right way. And we'll fix the hole up here in a moment too. So to do this, we're going to drop down our modeling tools here. Now this kind of represents what we have over here, but it has a couple of tools that we don't have over here. So I'm actually going to turn off polygon mode for a second, and we're going to see this changes just like this changes based on what's selected. But what we want is swift loop, and this is going to allow us to put in edges wherever we want them, and these edges will loop around our entire object, which is important. It means it's going to create four-sided polygons all the way around. So I'm going to just create some there, create some there. And what I'm able to do is if I double click on any of these edges, it's going to select all the ones in that loop, and then I could type in, you know, like 1 here, or maybe let's say 0.75. I could come to the one on this side, double click it, negative 0.75, and that would just make them even on both sides, which I'm kind of weird like that and I want things to be perfect. So and then to make that hole, all I have to do is select a polygon on this side, and I'm going to turn on isolate here again just so I don't have to look at that monitor. But I'm going to select the polygon on this side, the one on this side, and hit delete, and that will delete the polygons on both sides there. I'm going to go to border mode. I'm going to select the border edge here around that hole, and the border edges here around this hole. I'm going to use bridge to bridge polygons in between them, and it fixes that hole and basically gives us the hole there that we kind of want. We're going to use bridge also here. Before I do that, I want to right click, go to object properties. I'm going to turn off my back faces. By default, I like to have back faces just turned off so I can see where there are holes in my mesh easily. And we should be able to do the same thing. Only this time we're going to bridge from here down to the bottom. So if I select those border edges here, I'm going to go to edge mode, and it's going to, I don't have to hold control in this case because these are edges and these are edges, so it doesn't convert. But I can just simply deselect the ones on this side, and I'm going to bridge from here down to there. But as we can see, there's a vertex that runs across here, so we'll need another set of segments. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to go to bridge settings. It's going to try to bridge there, but as you can see, if I did that, I would get triangles on this side and this side. But if I add segments and hit check, I now can go to Weld, Target Weld, and I can select the vertex that I want to weld. I get this dotted line telling me that it's looking for another spot to weld to, and I can select that vertex. And that keeps these nice four-sided, and I don't have these n-gons to deal with, so I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Select the border edges, or if I want to select them individually, I can just do this, hold control and keep clicking. I'll select all those. The bridge settings are already going to be what I used last time, so I could just click bridge knowing that it's going to be the same. Go to vertex, target weld. I'm going to target weld these. I right click when I'm finished to cancel out the tool. Okay, that gives me that part. Now if I wanted, I could have bridged. Let me show you another way that I could approach this, just to give you an idea of something that might actually be more appropriate for this object. So I'm just going to select these and delete these, just to give you an idea about clean topology. You can see we've got four edges here, which would also match up with the four edges there, and it would allow me to keep these lines moving through my my mesh here. So I can select 4 there, 4 there, leaving 2 there, and leaving 2 there. I'm going to use bridge, target weld, in vertex mode. And that means it's keeping my edges consistently flowing up around through here. That's important. Will it really make a huge difference? Maybe not, but when I go in and start texturing, it'll make it a little nicer. So I'm just going to, I did the thing with border mode again where I had selected there, deselecting 2 on the opposite sides, bridge, vertex, target weld, click my first point, my second point, first and second, right click to finish. And there we go. So that's starting my stand. Now I'm going to go back into polygon mode. I'm going to select the polygons on this side. And if we look at this, actually not this one, but this one actually has an edge that kind of sticks out a little bit further than here. So to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up not selecting all of these, just so I keep that kind of look to where this part's out in front of these. I'm going to go to extrude, and I'm going to turn my reference back on here. I'm going to go into my front view, and I'm going to change my height here to somewhere around there. So let's just type in 4.5 in this case. Okay, that gives me those. You can see these are rotated at almost like a 30 or 45 degree angle. So I'm going to just do that. And actually what I'm going to show you real quick is selection sets. So I have these 2 sides selected. I'm going to go up here and say under create selection set, and I'm going to type in let's say base polys, something like that, something very simple. I'm going to press enter when I'm done, and I'll show you how that works in a second. So I'm going to deselect the ones on this side, and I'll rotate these. Let's go 30 degrees. Now I can come back up here and say base polys. It's going to select both sides. I'll deselect that side, 30 degrees, and now I'll go to base polys. I'm going to go to the top view, go to move, and I'm going to drag these forward until this kind of looks like it makes a 90-degree angle between these. Okay, that's my base. Okay, so that's my monitor, my monitor's base. And if I want to create the buttons on here, very simple way to do that is by going to cylinder. I'm going to turn on auto grid. I'm going to zoom in here. Auto grid will allow me to, instead of making my grid based on the actual grid, it's going to align it to polygons that are created here. So I can just click and drag to start my button, and then as I drag out, I'm going to create my buttons from there. So this is how I'm going to go about these buttons. I'm going to take auto grid off now. I'm going to isolate this for a second. I'm going to convert it to an editable polygon. I'm going to get rid of the polygon on this side because if we never see it, we don't need it. I'm going to get rid of the one on this side so I can do the bridging that I did before, just so you really get a handle on that. So select the borders, deselect 2 on this side, 2 on this side, giving us 4 up here and 4 down here. Bridge. Oh, so this object I haven't set the settings on yet. So I'll go to settings instead, set this to 2, check, to finish. Go to vertex mode, target weld. Okay, so that's going to be my button. I'm going to unhide my monitor here, and in my reference, if I look at this, I got one big button. This is actually sunk in, so I'm just going to not worry about that. And then I got 4 buttons over that are smaller. I'm going to go to element mode. I'm going to select my entire object element. I'm going to hold shift and drag that over as an element and say OK. I'm going to go to scale, scale this down, move. And it's going to make sure this is moved in here, so I'll go ahead and move that one in a little bit. And then I can just duplicate these and just keep hitting OK on this, because it's going to come up every time I clone something. I'm going to turn off element mode. I'm going to go back to my monitor, and I'm going to say attach. And I'm going to click those buttons. So now this monitor has these buttons. Our objects that were our buttons have now disappeared because they've become attached to this object. And if I want, I could even attach my base and make that all one object. And that's basically it for my monitor. So fairly simple. We've covered our main tools that I use for modeling every time I model, which is going to be extrude, bevel, inset in polygon mode, in border and edge mode, bridge, it's used a lot, and in vertex mode, weld, target weld. Those are like the most tools that I use. Up here in the graphite modeling tools, or just the modeling tools as it's now I guess just referred, whenever I deselect vertex, swift loop, very important to use this. If you want to pause here and read exactly what that says, or just highlight over yours, it'll tell you exactly what it is. But it's really handy tool. One thing I would say is don't overuse it, don't abuse it. That sounded weird. But that's the monitor. So I'm going to save this as my monitor, just so I have it. I normally will make a folder for my models, and I'll save this as monitor. Okay, so for the next object, we're going to do this very much the same way, and I'm going to go through the keyboard, and I'm going to do this in a separate video, so this is going to be probably 3 or 4 parts total. We'll see if I end up getting to the PC tower, just because it's kind of simple compared to the rest of the objects. The monitor's got a little bit of difficult stuff to it. The mouse is kind of organic depending on what you pick, and the keyboard's got a lot of buttons, which I can show you how to approach those. So check back for the next video showing how to create a, let's go with keyboard next, so we'll do keyboard, and I'll try to link that in this video at the end. Thanks for watching. If you found this informative, or this helped you out or anything, please give me some likes and subscribe and comments, nice comments hopefully. And if you want to leave in the comments something that you'd like to see me make, or how I might approach things, go ahead and do that. So thanks for watching.